It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of October 3rd, 1997. We've got 7 movies to look at today, so let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and jump on into it, and we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, Morgan Freeman starring as Alex Cross in the James Patterson novels in Kiss the Girls. Like I said, Morgan Freeman plays Alex Cross, who's a Washington, D.C. cop and forensic psychologist who learns that his niece, who's going to college in North Carolina, is missing, so he goes there and learns that the police think she's among the victims who were somehow kidnapped by a guy who kidnaps young girls and holds them captive and kills them, who dubs themselves Casanova after the Great Lover. Later, this woman, played by Ashley Judd, escapes and tries to help Cross find her niece, and Alex Cross has been in a couple of movies, 2 of them with Morgan Freeman, and then there was one, the last one was with Tyler Perry, which did not perform very well whatsoever, but people still seem to come around to Morgan Freeman as Alex Cross. I mean, this one became a big hit, despite the fact it got pretty negative reviews when it came out, and actually the film was not shown in some theaters in Central Virginia at the time of its release because there was an unsolved murder of 3 teenage girls in the area, and the plot is pretty much the same thing as that, and so they did that out of respect for the families and surrounding communities, and so the murders were eventually solved and attributed to this guy, Richard Ivanowitz. But like I said, this film did not get a whole lot of good reviews. I mean, Morgan Freeman was praised for his performance as Alex Cross in here, but everything else about the movie seemed like it was pretty clunky and offered few surprises to it. Not a whole lot of people gave it a whole lot of good praise for it. And, honestly, I kind of tend to agree with them. Like, despite the fact that Morgan Freeman is very good in this film, as is Ashley Judd, I think the movie as a whole is kind of a formulaic... It's a formulaic thriller, honestly. Like, there's no real big twist. There's nothing too engaging or too exciting about the movie. It's about the story or what the big suspense is going to be at the end. Like, you can kind of figure out where it's going to go. It doesn't really have a whole lot of surprises to really make it stand out on its own. It's a film that just really feels... It feels very formulaic. It doesn't feel like there's a whole lot there that could really make this work as well as it should. But, like I said, people went to go see it, and it did become a hit, and there was an eventual sequel that came after this, which is better. Along Came a Spider, but we'll get to that one once we get to 2001. But as far as this film goes, it's just okay for what it is. It certainly could have been a whole lot better, but as it is, it's a pretty forgettable movie, but mostly works because Morgan Freeman is Alex Cross, and he does play the role very well here. Other than that, though, that's about pretty much all you can say about this movie. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Oliver Stone's U-Turn. I'm sorry, I guess David Lynch also directed this movie, too, because that trailer clearly was edited like a David Lynch movie, and not a particularly good one, and that's probably the best way to describe this movie, man. I mean, for Oliver Stone to have as many successes that he had up to this point, I mean, think about it. Platoon, Wall Street, Talk Radio, Born on the 4th of July, The Doors, JFK, Natural Born Killers, Nixon. This was really the first real misfire by Oliver Stone as a filmmaker, and it's just like I said, it just feels like he was trying to copy too much of David Lynch's style. Like, you can definitely tell that's a David Lynch caliber trailer with all these different kind of black comedic elements to it, but it just didn't come together all that well, despite the cast that they have here. I mean, you see the names in there: Sean Penn, Jennifer Lopez, Nick Nolte, Powers Booth, Claire Danes, Joaquin Phoenix, Billy Bob Thornton. John Voight's also in the film, as is Adrian Ben-Ruby. Julie Haggerty's also in here. Laurie Metcalf. Liv Tyler has a cameo in this movie, too. It's written by a good writer, too, John Ridley. John Ridley went on to, of course, write 12 Years a Slave, which won the Oscar for Best Picture. And I don't know, the movie itself just feels like, it doesn't feel like there's really anything interesting or intriguing happening in this movie to make it kind of enjoyable to watch. Like, you don't get invested in these characters whatsoever. Yeah, Jennifer Lopez can look very sexy in this movie all she wants to, but you know what? Just like with all the celebrity news scenes in bad movies, you can just go online and look for those scenes, and you really see the best the sexy scenes on there, and you don't have to watch this movie because there's nothing about this movie that is investing whatsoever. It's a boring movie. It's a movie that has a tone that's just all over the place. It's not really funny. It's not really that suspenseful. It's not really all that clever. It just feels like a movie that never knows exactly what direction it wants to go in, and it just kind of feels like you have to try something that is to make this kind of stand out, and it doesn't really work that way. Like like I said, it feels like Oliver Stone's trying too hard to be David Lynch, and David Lynch, it's hard to do what David Lynch does with his movies. They're not all great movies, but they have this unique look to them that's just like, you know what? I can see where you're coming from, and I can see where you're actually going with this. But as far as this movie goes, it's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad movie. It's the first real major misfire for Oliver Stone as a filmmaker. Like, there's been a couple of ones that, in between his good streak, where they weren't great, but they at least tried. This one didn't feel like he was trying whatsoever. It felt like it was being forced onto you, and it just didn't work. It's a mess on so many levels. Avoid this one like the plague. So, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Janeane Garofalo in The Matchmaker. A mostly forgettable romantic comedy with Janeane Garofalo in it. Janeane Garofalo, who was just in The Truth About Cats and Dogs years prior to this, which was a fun movie for what it was. Formulaic, but still a ton of fun. And to her credit, she's not the worst thing about the movie. I mean, she really is the best. She's far from it. I think she is the best thing about the movie overall. Like, she does give a good performance. She does carry a lot of the weight of the movie overall. But as far as the movie itself goes, it's just kind of mediocre. There's nothing really too exciting going on other than Garofalo's performance. Despite Dennis Leary also being in here as well. You also have Saffron Burrows, David O'Hara, and Milo O'Shea are also in this as well. But other than that, though, the movie itself is just pretty mediocre for the most part. The only reason I think you should watch this movie is because of Garofalo. But other than that, though, it's not something I'd rush out to see right away. If you really want to see a lot of the best works by Garofalo, watch this one, and you get one of her best performances overall. But the movie itself is not going to be anything too exciting overall. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about The Matchmaker. And now let's move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Errol Morris's Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control. Errol Morris, the same man that gave us such documentaries as Gates of Heaven, The Thin Blue Line, A Brief History of Time. This is his latest film, and it follows various different people. It kind of takes four subjects with extraordinary group. Here's you have a wild animal trainer, you have a topiary gardener at Green Animals Topiary Garden in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, an expert on naked mole rats at the Philadelphia Zoo, and an MIT scientist who works in robotics. And you have all these different people trying to go through this narration of the story here, and I don't know. I mean, I don't think it has a whole lot there to really make it stand out. I've seen some of Morris's other documentaries, The Gates of Heaven, as well as A Brief History of Time, and I think those are far better movies, but as far as this one goes, I saw it, and I was just kind of like, the connection there isn't really making a whole lot of sense. It's not that it's bad, per se. It is a competently made movie. It has some good elements to it, but at the same time, there's not really a whole lot there that kind of makes it unique or something very different. But it just feels like they're just taking four different documentaries and just meshing them together into just one big one. It's like it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense why these four elements had to come together as it did. I mean, it could just be me on that front there, but I didn't get the same kind of satisfaction I got with this than I did with some of Morris's other documentaries, and that's just my personal take on it. I didn't think it was all that. I didn't think it was worth it all that much, but I might be alone on that factor there. So that's Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and we have Vince Vaughn, Kate Capshaw in The Locust. I think all you need to say about this movie is that its test screening experienced several audience members leaving the theater with their hands over their mouths after a scene with a full graphic bull castration. And I think, honestly, that's all you need to know about this movie. Apparently, the marketing chief at MGM basically said that audience members must have reacted only to what they expect to see, while the president of Worldwide Distribution said, you can do anything to a human being in a movie, just don't hurt an animal. I don't know what the hell they were thinking about that. Thinking when they saw that movie, it's just kind of like really, really, that's what you need to sell this movie on. It's just like that's one of those things where you look at that and you think, this is gonna be the thing that's gonna make people want to at least check this movie out, rather than the actual movie itself. But the actual movie itself is pretty bland. It's a mediocre melodramatic movie, and even that scene in particular, it's not really worth it when it's all said and done. It just feels like they just had to put it there because nobody was going to go see this movie otherwise. It's a boring, boring movie. Despite the fact that it has the people involved in it, Vince Vaughn, Jeremy Davies, Kate Capshaw, Paul Rudd, Ashley Judd, there's nothing too exciting about this one. It's a mess of a film. It's a film that's not really all that interesting or all that exciting. And even that one scene that got the controversy over it, it's not worth it for that. It's just a forgettable film. Speaking of forgettable films, let's talk about Washington Square. A movie that I thought was some kind of crime drama, but it's anything but that. It's directed by the person who did the Secret Garden. I was about to say the Black Stallion. It's got Jennifer Jason Leigh, Albert Finney, Ben Chaplin, Maggie Smith, and Judith Ivey in it. And it's based off of Henry James's novel of the same name, which was filmed as The Heiress in 1949. Did not do well with critics, honestly, and it was... no, I take that back. It did well with critics, but it was a huge box office bomb when it came out, because, quite honestly, it's another one of those movies that's really boring. It's nothing that engaging or exciting. Like, even if you had Merchant Ivory on this film, it still wouldn't have been enough to sell this film. It feels just kind of bland and mediocre, despite the fact that everybody is given their all in this film. It's not worth it in the end. It's just kind of a bland, mediocre mess of a film. Like, it's not really that engaging. It's not really all that exciting. It's just there, and it's nothing really all that interesting on any way, shape, or form. At least in my personal opinion. So, that's Washington Square. So let's go ahead and move on to the last movie we have here, and that is Forgotten Silver. So this was a documentary by Peter Jackson, as you see in the trailer there, about a pioneering New Zealand filmmaker, Colin Mackenzie, and the rediscovery of his lost films, which presenter Peter Jackson claims to have found in an old shed. And what they find out is, when this movie came out, everyone thought this was a serious documentary. Everyone thought that this was real. This was based off a real person in real life. But then, shortly after the movie came out, Jackson revealed that it was a hoax, and eventually that created controversy. But it was later screened at film festivals and eventually made its way to theaters in 1997, 2 years after it first premiered in New Zealand. I've never seen the documentary per se. I don't know if it's any good or not, but it's a fun idea. It's a fun idea to play around with, honestly. So I don't doubt it's a bad movie. I don't doubt it's a good movie. It probably is a very entertaining film. It's not even a film, honestly. It's only about 53 minutes long, so I don't know. Maybe it's actually pretty good. I mean, I've never seen it before, so I can't really say if it's any good or not. So that's Peter Jackson's Forgotten Silver. So with that said, that wraps up another edition of Time About the Movies. When we meet next time, we'll have 8 movies to look at, including Brad Pitt in 7 Years in Tibet, Harlan Williams in Disney's Rocket Man, Keenen Ivory Wayans and John Voight in Most Wanted, Tupac Shakur starring alongside Jim Belushi in Gang Related, The House of Yes, Paul Thomas Anderson's star-studded Boogie Nights, The Sweet Hereafter, and also Lily. So 8 movies to look at overall. And again, some really interesting movies to talk about there. So we'll look at those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And as always, hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. So with that said, thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time. And until then, as always, take care.